Ulterion had found himself in a desert as he escaped a band of orc thugs chasing him. They were chased off when a giant sandworm came out and ate Ulterion. But that's a story for another day.
Sir? Sir?
Ulterion's eyes opened. As the world came into focus, he saw a small face staring down at him. It was a small woman. At first he thought she was a little girl, but upon closer look he found she was an adult gnome.
Are you all right?
Ulterion looked around, confused.
Yes, surprisingly for someone eaten by a sandworm. Where am...
Ulterion tried to get up, but found he was chained to the ground.
What is this?
The gnomish woman, laughed nervously.
Well, you're a tall person, so we didn't want you getting up too fast and hitting your head on the ceiling.
Ulterion nodded and shrugged as well as someone chained down could shrug.
Makes sense.
The gnomish woman looked away sheepishly.
Also, you're our prisoner.
Ulterion tried to get up as the news shocked him.
What?
But quickly remembered the chains.
It's nothing personal, it's just that you're human.
That doesn't make it better.
The gnomish woman reached for a sword at her side. She struggled with her poorly put-on armor as she did so.
Don't harm me or I will have to put you down.
Ulterion brandished his chains.
How?
The gnome woman was frantic.
I have to check on something. I will bring you food.
The gnome woman ran off. Ulterion yelled after the gnome woman.
Wait! I have so many questions. Where am I? Who are you? What's going...
Ulterion tried fighting his bonds, but to no avail.
How do I keep getting myself in these situations?
Ulterion schemed and planned and thought of any possible thing he could do. What he decided on was a nap. The gnome woman, Harriet, was in the kitchen. Stress cooking.
Do I have enough eggs?
It's all she could think of to do. She was hired as cook, not a guard after all, but there were no guards left because... She shook her head to get the thought out of her mind.
I hope he likes eggs.
Ulterion was sleeping until the scent hit his nostrils. He awoke with a smile on his face.
Is that eggs?
Harriet made her way down a corridor with a plate of food shaking in her hands. Her armor was uncomfortable, probably due to it not being her armor. She had taken it off a dead guard. One of the victims of... She shook her head as if that would rid her of the grisly memory.
No, we're not going to think about that.
Harriet continued to walk while trying to compose herself, and failing. Ulterion propped his head up as best he could, with a smile on his face.
Smells like breakfast. Or lunch. Or dinner?
Ulterion shook his head.
Whatever, I'm hungry.
Suddenly, Ulterion heard a noise.
Huh?
Ulterion looked up, as best he could.
Hello?
Ulterion could only make out a small, dark figure in the corner of his cell.
Hi there. Say, do you work with the gnome lady?
The shadowy figure just stared.
Okay. Well, could you take these chains off me? They seem excessive.
The shadowy figure just continued to stare at Ulterion. Ulterion was getting uncomfortable.
Not a talkative fellow, are you?
The shadowy figure started to move forward. Ulterion grew more uncomfortable. His discomfort was becoming fear as the dark figure moved closer.
Hey, what are you doing? Get away!
Harriet continued her trek down the corridor, thinking that it was getting longer every day.
I need to exercise more.
She heard something in the distance.
Get away from me!
Oh no! They've got him.
Harriet dropped the plate, drew her sword, and charged towards her prisoner.
Leave him alone, you monsters!
Ulterion stared in horror as the figure drew closer. Ulterion fought against his chains as hard as he could, but it was useless.
Go away! Leave me alone! Stop!
A dark figure reached a claw towards Ulterion.
Get away from him!
The figure looked towards something Ulterion couldn't see. It hissed and snarled before running off. The gnome guard ran into Ulterion's vision, giving him a look of concern.
Are you all right?
Ulterion shrugged.
Me? I'm fine.
Ulterion grew angry.
Just covered in chains and had to deal with something trying to eat me.
Harriet sighed and sheathed her sword.
Are you hungry?
Ulterion stared at Harriet in shock. However, he was hungry. Ulterion leaned over the kitchen, eating voraciously. Some of the leaning was due to the cramped space and him being incredibly hungry. He barely heard Harriet talking.
There was 50 of us to run this thing.
Ulterion looked at Harriet curiously.
Where's everyone?
Harriet wiped away the wayward bit of egg that Ulterion spit onto her forehead.
Many are dead. The others? Well, I don't know what happened, but they are not where they should be.
Ulterion looked around as he swallowed.
Not to offend, but why didn't you prevent it? Aren't you a guard?
Oh, I would be offended if I was a guard, but no. I am the cook.
Ulterion looked surprised.
I'm surprised a cook is running this whole facility. Here's a question. Why don't you just leave?
Harriet shook her head.
It's not that easy. This place is on autopilot.
Ulterion nodded.
Oh, what's autopilot?
That's when something pilots itself.
Ulterion nodded again.
Ah, I see. What's pilot?
Harriet shook her head.
Do you remember what happened after the sandworm ate you?
I
A realization came to Ulterion.
actually don't remember escaping.
Harriet glared at Ulterion.
That's because you didn't.
The sandworm burrowed through the dirt and rock, with no real direction. Ulterion shook his head in disbelief.
How come I don't feel it moving?
That's a good question.
Ulterion stared at Harriet. She shrugged.
May I remind you that I'm the cook?
Right, you mentioned. Why are you by yourself in this
Ulterion tried to find a good word, but what he came up with was...
thing?
It started about 2 months ago. I think it was 2 months. It's hard to tell time underground. Anyway, my people were getting upset about the droves of non-gnomes coming into our lands. My people didn't know what to do, until they heard of a giant creature roaming the desert outside our land, the sandworm. Several soldiers were sent out to find the sandworm, but to no avail. So the higher-ups decided that if they couldn't find the myth, they would make the myth. It took a few months to make our sandworm, but once it was done, a team of 51 gnomes, 10 pilots, 10 engineers, 2 doctors, 8 nursemaids, 20 guards, and 1 cook, me, of course, we traveled around the perimeter of our country. The engineers did routine maintenance. The pilots kept the beast on track. The doctors and nurses attended to the sick.
Say ah for me. Ah. Thank you.
I, of course, prepared the meals, and the guards would patrol through the creature. And everything ran smoothly until a guard disappeared. And another guard disappeared. And another. And another. I was delivering food to one of the guards. When I found her, at least what was left of her, I ran into the pilot quarters to tell them what was going on. Help! Someone is... but found no one. I ran to the maintenance area to warn the engineers. The pilots are... But the engineers were missing too. I ran to the medical bay to tell the doctors and nurses. I need help! But no one was there either.
Harriet hung her head in sadness.
I looked all over the beast, but couldn't find anyone. But I caught glimpses of them.
Ulterion looked concerned,
Them?
as if on cue, the two heard noises. Ulterion and Harriet looked at each other.
Run!
Ulterion and Harriet ran down a corridor. Ulterion not so much, since he was too tall. Ulterion looked back and gasped as he saw small creatures with razor-sharp teeth and claws with thin, scaly white bodies chasing after him. Ulterion looked to Harriet in horror.
What are those things?
Harriet talked to Ulterion without bothering to look back to him.
Those are gremlins. They like destroying technology.
I'm not technology.
They like destroying things in general.
Good to know. Run faster.
Ulterion and Harriet made their way into the pilot quarters. Ulterion slammed the door behind him.
This is the pilot quarters. This will allow us to control the sandworm.
Great. Is there something here that we can use against the gremlins?
Harriet shrugged.
Possibly.
Do you know how to operate this thing?
Harriet stared at Ulterion.
I'm a cook.
Should have known.
The gremlins attacked the door. Ulterion watched the door in horror.
Whatever you're going to do, do it now.
Harriet nodded. The gremlins continued to attack the door, and they were slowly tearing through it. Ulterion watched as the door was slowly being broken down.
We need to hurry.
Harriet frantically pushes the buttons and pulls levers.
Yelling at me will not make me know what I'm doing.
The gremlins continued their assault on the door. Ulterion watched the door slowly crack and tear open. Ulterion looked around frantically. He found a large wrench.
Any port in a storm.
Ulterion picked up the wrench and brandished his weapon for the coming assault. The gremlins continued their attack on the door and created a sizable hole to see their prey. Ulterion started to see the creatures create holes and peeking through them. Ulterion tried to threaten them with his weapon. I emphasize trying, since Ulterion was shaking from fear.
Harriet, please do something now.
Harriet continued to push buttons and pull levers.
I'm trying.
Harriet came across a button with a picture of a lightning bolt on it.
Can't be that easy.
Ulterion watched as the gremlins started to come through.
Harriet!
Harriet shrugged.
Any port in a storm.
Harriet pushed the lightning button. Ulterion watched in shock as electricity coursed through the gremlins.
Oh my god!
The electricity stopped and left fried, dead gremlins in its wake. Ulterion ran over to Harriet, picked her up and embraced her.
You did it!
I did.
The two cheered and celebrated and shared a passionate kiss.